6 years ago, I was doing drugs every single day. I had fully resigned to the fact that I was just going to be a loser and I was never going to achieve the things that I wanted in my life. I was depressed, I was sad, and I was just doing every single wrong thing possible to ultimately achieve the things that I wanted to achieve. And fast forward 6, 7 years, my life is completely unrecognizable. I've closed millions of dollars worth of deals for Charlie. I've set up my own business and got to the point where I'm doing 10 plus K in profit every single month in 5 months. And I have these traits that I never thought I would have. And I see a lot of stories of online influencers, YouTubers that talk about their success journey and the things they overcame. And I'm not going to speak badly about any of these people, but I feel like a lot of them started at a point where things weren't going so bad. Yeah, maybe they were broke, maybe they were in a tough situation, but I don't see that many gurus talk about being a stoner, smoking weed every day, doing drugs every weekend, getting into fights. And look, maybe I talk about this stuff too much, but I learned 3 extremely important lessons in my journey because it feels like I've lived 1,000 lives up until this point. I never thought I would get to this point where I am today, especially when I was 18, 19 years old. I was in the depths of like legitimate, I guess, drug addiction. It sounds weird to even say. And I think if I can just talk about this enough, it's gonna have to help someone. Because when I started watching the videos, they didn't resonate with me in the beginning because I couldn't attach myself to someone who was in a tough spot. So if you're in a really bad spot, not just broke, not just struggling and you want to set up an online business, but like actually in a bad spot where you can't get out of this cycle of smoking and partying and feeling like a loser, I think these lessons are really going to be applicable for you and anyone, obviously, because it's important to talk about this stuff, in my opinion, because the change that I had to overcome was insane. It was massive. And it really gave me a different perspective on what it takes to change who you are as a person and how to become successful. So the first very important lesson and principle that I've had to understand throughout this 7-8 year journey is you can't expect them to understand. And I have 2 stories to really emulate what I mean here. And when I say you can't expect them to understand, I'm talking about anyone and everyone around you. Now, the simple story is with my friends. When you do drugs, when you party a lot, typically you don't do them alone, especially when you're 18, 19 years old. So I had all of these friends and my friend group from high school, we were all doing the same stuff. We were all partying, getting bags, doing naughty shit on the weekends. And one day, everything just kind of cracked for me and I had to change my life. I could not live like this any longer. So I did. I went completely sober, literally one day to the other. And there's this very distinct period where I went to my first CrossFit class because I was trying to change my life. And I went to my friend's house, sat down, they're all smoking weed. And one of them was like, yo, like, you want a bong? And I was like, no, I don't do that anymore. And it was like, it's like almost like I died to them that day. And over the next, couple weeks, couple months, I still tried to stay in touch with my friends, right? Because they're my best friends. And I just couldn't because they couldn't understand why I was doing this. And I shouldn't have expected them to because in the moment it really hurt. But looking back on it now, it's not their fault. It's not my fault. It's no one's fault. And I eventually completely removed myself from those people, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. And then fast forward probably 3 or 4 years, I was in a really good spot. I was about to move to Berlin and I went back and I saw one of my closest friends. I actually went to a party to see everyone, still sober at the time. And I remember he pulled me aside and he's like, look, man, like everyone's kind of mad at you. And I was like, mad at me? For what? Like what you guys are doing is not good. What I am doing and trying to do is better for me. If you were really my friend, you would understand that. And they just didn't. And it hurt again, even though I'd thought I was over that feeling. And I've realized later in life, you just cannot expect these people to understand what you're doing. Because if you don't expect them to understand, you will not be hurt by what they say and the intentions that they have. And that was just my friends. There was this one time when I was in those bad years of my life where my mum was obviously really worried about me. You need to stop, you need to go to therapy. I mean, like, I nearly dropped out of university because of what I was doing. You need to go see a therapist, you need help, blah, blah, blah. And obviously I wouldn't listen and I wouldn't do anything about it. And then, you know, I did get sober, I fixed my shit. But essentially, I guess you could call it monk mode. You know, I locked in, I didn't see anyone for 3+ years. Didn't go out, didn't do anything, work, gym, repeat. That was all I was doing. It wasn't the agency for a lot of that time, but I was working a job, trying to, you know, make some money and build some savings. So after my mum told me to go see a therapist because I was too naughty, fast forward 1.5 years, she sat down with me and was like, Louis, I think that you need to go see someone because this isn't healthy. You need to go out more. And I was like, what? I've stopped the thing that you wanted me to stop and I'm doing something else that is ultimately the best thing I could have been doing for myself at the time. And my mother, of all people, still had the same perception because I wasn't living up to their expectations. So fuck their expectations. Just don't expect them to understand what you're doing ever. And if you can rationalize that and really accept that fact, you will be in a much better position and it will allow you to change on your terms, not theirs. Because it has to be on your terms. It can't be on anyone else's terms because it's hard. And it's hard enough without the opinions of other people affecting how you feel through this journey of changing who you are and changing your life. Because let's be honest, what I'm doing now is significantly better than what I was doing back then. So then we need to start thinking about the time and the trade-offs. And this is really the second thing that I needed to understand and have now understood about this sort of journey that a lot of us need to take ultimately to get where we want to go, is you have to be okay with the trade-offs. You have to be okay with the sacrifices now for the future that you want to gain, because you can't have everything. You can't have both. If you expect or want or hope to make money online, grow a business, be a high-level entrepreneur, whatever, you can't expect to also do the things and have the traits and the qualities that someone who isn't successful has. You have to fully immerse yourself in that life, in that aspect, in being that person. You have to become that person. And you're going to have to make sacrifices. Now, I look at my YouTube audience, most of you guys are from 18 to 30 years old. So we're all about in the same spot. We're all probably feeling the same things. You're gonna have to sacrifice the fun time now. I had to sacrifice my early 20s. I had to make that trade-off. Were there times where I was feeling sad? Absolutely. Were there times where I thought that I should go out and should party and should enjoy myself and make memories? Sure. But because I sacrificed those 3 years, I've got 3 years of absolute bliss in Europe because of what I did in the past. And then actually when I got here, because I'd learned that lessons that there are going to be trade-offs. So when I was in Europe, it was periods of really, really hard work, not enjoying my experience here at all, especially closing for Charlie when I was taking all those calls, and then dipping into a small, memorable experience. But the things that I'm gonna remember when I look back on all of this at the end of the day is the work that I put in, the sacrifices that I did make. Because if you have big trade-offs and then allow yourself small moments of really valuable experiences, that's what you're gonna remember. You're not gonna remember the 6 weeks in a row you went to the same club, but you will remember the year that you worked on the business and that one holiday that you took with your friends. Because time is like money. It is much more valuable now in terms of what you want to get in the future. Like if you want to go party and have fun in your 20s, sure. But your 20s are so much more valuable to you in terms of setting up your life long term, because your 20s are a very small amount of your life, maybe 15%, depending on how long you live, right? So you have such an unfair advantage over other people later in life if you start earlier. So you just have to accept the trade-offs, and you have to accept that no one's going to understand the trade-offs that you make. And you have to be okay with that. Because if you're not okay with it, why would they be okay with it? So I'm 27, or about to turn 27. You know, I'm not that old, but I'm definitely getting older. And I think that I assumed when I was younger that by the time I got to this age, I wouldn't have that darkness that haunts me any longer. And that's not true. So the third principle and the third thing that I've learned is to use that darkness to push you forward rather than pull you back, because it's always going to be there. And if you are someone who is really struggling like I was, like not just, oh, I don't have any money, but really struggling, like having bad habits, doing bad things, detrimental things to your life, you have this darkness, and not everyone has this. That's something that I also realize, is that a lot of people don't have the feeling and the darkness that I have inside me, the thing that scares me but also drives me, right? So you need to reallocate that darkness. Don't fight it, because if you try and fight it, it will overcome you in a negative way. You need to accept it and leverage it for something better. I still have these feelings of that I'm failing, that I'm not enough, that I can't do this. And I would love to go blow off some steam, especially now with the new business, with things, the pressure, everything starting to build. You know how easy it would be for me to go down to my local cafe here in Barcelona and just get ripped? It'd be very easy. But I've accepted it. I've acknowledged it. I've befriended it to a degree, and I use it and I lean into it rather than away from it. And one of my favorite quotes that I think really encapsulates this message is, people think champions have something that they don't. The reality is, champions are missing something that normal people have. They're missing that ability to be happy and comfortable and okay, and be inside of themselves all of the time without feeling pain. The difference between people who end up on the street because they let that feeling overcome them, and the people who become successful in life, is the people who become successful, they become comfortable with that feeling and they lean into it rather than away from it. Don't try and run from that feeling. Let it fuel you. Let it drive you, because you'll run much faster away from a lion than you will towards a nice new boat. You need to use that feeling, that consequence, what we talk about in sales all the time, to push you forward. Your why, if you have this feeling, your why needs to be that, because it is the most powerful thing that will drive you. So it can all be boiled down to this. Don't expect them to understand. Be intentional about your trade-offs, and use your darkness to push you, not bury you. So as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed that one, and I will see you guys on the next one.